Starks, John Kimball, Jason Kreis, just out on the apron of the field here between the benches after the Q&A portion. So with that, I'd like to introduce the president of Real Salt Lake and Utah Royals FC Business Operations, John Kimball.
Thanks, Trey. Very excited to be here. This is a very exciting day for me personally, but would like to welcome everybody. And we have an exciting lineup of speakers, really in this order, from Larry H. Miller Company's CEO, Steve Starks, will speak to us next. After Steve, Jason Kreis will address us, and then at that point, Larry H. Miller Company Board Chairman and RSL and Royals Governor, Steve Miller, will follow. Following our remarks, like Trey had mentioned, we'll have the opportunity for one-on-one media. And as we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge the moment. It was 21 years ago in October in 2004 when we introduced Jason Kreis, our first ever player. We did this before we had a name, before we had a logo, even before we had our colors. Jason eventually became the first ever MLS player to score 100 goals. From that point, he went from being a captain on a Saturday to a head coach on a Tuesday, ending up winning a championship for us, the great state of Utah's only in the last 60 years, and has also taken us to 4 finals. Throughout my career, I've worked with and for the Miller family, and in the last 6 to 7 months, the integration with the Larry H. Miller companies, with Miller Sports and Entertainment, have been extremely rewarding. I could not be more excited for the unprecedented stability our club has now with the Miller's presence, guidance, and expertise. And as we go into one of the most pinnacle years in the world of sports in 2026, sure to be incredible, not only for RSL and the Royals, but the whole sport in North America as we host the World Cup here in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. All of our fans and our community at large should know that we are more than prepared to meet this and very excited to see this tipping point happen. With that, I'd like to acknowledge Michelle Smith, the president of MSE, here today, along with both sporting directors of our teams, Kurt Schmidt and Kelly Cousins from the Utah Royals. And now I'm proud to introduce Steve Starks, Chief Executive Officer for Larry H. Miller Companies.
Thank you, John. I want to acknowledge his leadership and friendship. We are grateful to have John Kimball, and he always has a steady hand on the wheel. And I believe that Jason was the first player, but John was the first employee, and also happens to be his birthday today. And so, John, happy birthday. We'll have the media sing to you here in a minute. As John mentioned, this is an exciting day for Utah soccer and for our community. In our first 6 months of ownership, we have reviewed our internal structure, evaluated the executive talent, engaged with both league offices, and have studied best practices from around the world. We are one of only a few organizations that own both an MLS and NWSL teams. While these are distinct teams and staffs, it became apparent to us that we could leverage greater resources, innovation, culture, and competitiveness by having them report to a single sporting executive who could have visibility over both clubs, provide mentorship, and set a tone in championship culture. We are excited to announce that the Miller family and Miller Sports and Entertainment, along with our entire ownership group, has promoted Jason Kreis to our club's first ever president of soccer operations. In this role, Jason will oversee all soccer operations for both Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals and will report directly to ownership. As John mentioned, Jason has competed as a player and then coached at the highest level. He is widely respected around the sport and has our trust and the trust of the entire organization. We want to be world class. We want to be elite, as Jason likes to say. In our examination, Jason's vision and ideas for our relentless pursuit of excellence, his love of this club and the sport in this state, and his culture-building approach stood out, leading to this decision. Specifically, in addition to his experience at RSL, Jason has experience in a variety of levels at the highest level of the sport, different teams and different roles. As we got to know each other, it was apparent that that experience, the accumulation of Jason's experience overall, gives him a very unique perspective. In short, we were all aligned that he knows what elite looks like, and he has a competitiveness about him that we loved. He has a commitment to this organization and state, and we're very proud to make this announcement today. And so with that, I would love to turn the time over to Jason and invite you all to give him a warm welcome. Thank you.
Wow, a lot, a lot. I was just thinking, I'll go off script for a second. I was just thinking about how this is now, I think, the third sort of big press conference I've done. First one being in October 2004 as the first ever player. Second one being 07, May 07, being announced as the head coach. That was shocking to everyone, and I'm sure this is somewhat shocking to everyone as well. So third time's a charm, hopefully. Start by just saying thank you, Steve, for your kind remarks, and thank you to everyone in the room for being here today. I want to begin by saying how truly grateful, honored, and humbled I am to be trusted in this way by the Miller family, the Blitzer Group, Scott Crace, Steve Starks, Michelle Smith, and last but certainly not least, John Kimball. John has been my staunchest supporter these past couple of years, and he was easily the biggest proponent and driver to bring me back to my beloved club here in Utah. Thank you, John, and happy birthday. There are two things that I'd like to open up with that many of you may or may not know about me. Number one is that I don't like to talk. And I certainly don't love to talk in a public setting like this. Allow me to be comfortable with you all for a bit. An emotional, passionate guy who says what he means and means what he says. So please also allow me to get emotional with you. My wife is here today, and I would be sorely remiss if I didn't mention how grateful I am of her and her support through what has been a very long, challenging, stressful, but meaningful career in this game so far. She is my rock. She is our family's backbone. And without her, there is zero chance I would be standing here today. Thank you, Kimberly. I think it's interesting that Steve Starks mentions the learnings. Through my time in this game, I've had my share of what most people would consider failures. I was the first player ever signed at Real Salt Lake a long time ago, and in those first few years, we lost a lot. Then I was the head coach here for 7 years. In that time, we experienced a lot of success, and I left here in 2014 at the top of the coaching echelon. I then went away for 10 years, and truthfully, I did not have a ton of success. But through all of that, I experienced and learned a lot. I worked in Manchester, England, New York City, Orlando, and Miami, Florida. Players. I worked with a world super club. I helped to start a youth academy from scratch. I coached a second team. I was a U.S. Olympic team head coach. I was a U.S. national team assistant coach. And finally, I worked as an MLS assistant coach. Through all those challenges and all the ups and downs, I came to realize three very critical things that all of us should continually consider and ask ourselves. The first question that we should ask ourselves is, are you happy with what you do? Or do you feel fulfilled by what you do? The answer for me just 2 short years ago was a resounding no. The second question is, are you happy with where you are? And through all those places that I dragged my family to, all those moves, I realized I wasn't happy where I was. it dawned on me then that Salt Lake is where I should be. Salt Lake is where I had a tremendous amount of success, and Salt Lake is where I felt appreciated. Salt Lake is where we raised our children. Salt Lake is our home. We belong here. I want you to hear me say that again, because it is obviously a very simple phrase, but I think it has deep emotional complexity underneath. We belong here. And the third question, and arguably the most important one, is who do you surround yourself with? Who do you work with? What is clear to me now more so than ever before is that this city, this community, this ownership group, and these soccer staffs that are assembled in our clubs are full of high quality, high character people. I believe so strongly that we are surrounded by and led by so many wonderful people here. And I am someone that believes this is the most critical part to everything we do, whether that's building a department, building a coaching staff, or building our teams. People and character matter. For the first time since perhaps 2013, when I left this great place, I am just so happy to be able to answer all three of these critical questions with a resounding yes. Seeing what we now have here at Zion Bank Training Center, taking an active role in the Utah Royals' rebirth this summer, fully aligning, understanding, and influencing what our academy and Monarchs are producing, and potentially learning best practices from 40 years of Miller operations in our community, as well as the potential learnings from the Blitzer clubs in Europe, my adrenaline and excitement are surging at the thought of how I can apply what I've experienced and what I've learned to our club leaders, our sporting directors, our coaches, our staff members, and our players to consistently and relentlessly pursue championships. There is one more lesson. I guess at being 50 years old, you start to think you have life lessons. There's one more life lesson I'd like to share with everyone here as I close up. And it was actually the main point of focus I tried my best to impart to the Royals staff and players this past summer. There are really only two things in our lives which we have absolute and sole control of: our attitude and our work rate. I can make everyone here two solemn promises. Number one, I will approach every day with a positive, competitive, and collaborative attitude. And number two, I will put absolutely everything I have into this project. Nobody will work harder or be more committed to this than me. The best is yet to come. And as my favorite Latin phrase states, Audentis Fortuna Juvat. For those of you that didn't take Latin in high school, that means fortune favors the bold. And I do plan to be bold. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations, Jason. I'd like to take this opportunity to just express how honored and excited for the continued opportunities that we have to dive into the soccer world and to be welcomed so warmly into the RSL club. I'd also like to thank everybody for the opportunity to work with RSL and the Royals and the families here who have welcomed us so warmly, and for the amazingly loyal fans who show up to support the Claret and Cobalt. It has become even more obvious to us that RSL and the Royals have an incredibly passionate fan base, one for which we are very grateful. Our first few months have already become a signature moment for our family. RSL Club's values align closely with our families and the entire Larry H. Miller organization's values and the way we think about and approach professional sports. I echo everything that has been said about Jason. He is a phenomenal connector amongst the coaches and the players, the front office, the business sides of our operations, with the fans in the community, across all aspects of the club. Jason is deeply in tune with the roots of this club, from our old friend Dave Checketts, the founder of RSL, to everyone who roams the halls in both Sandy and Harriman today. Our goal for all of our teams is to win trophies. It is apparent that Jason is the executive to lead our club to accomplish that goal. Jason, we are grateful for you and everyone in the RSL Royal and the Royals families. After the Royals wrap up their season this weekend, we are excited to have a great off-season and to build from there, and Jason will be the one to lead us to do that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, everybody. You guys can stay seated and answer the questions that come from the audience here. I think first we'll go to David James and then Caleb Turner here to my left. I think a mic might be on the way. Okay.
For Steve and Jason, I don't know, any of you who want to answer this. I think RSL fans are curious that for all the investment in the facilities and the players, the price of poker keeps going up. LA just spent more money on one player than RSL spends on the whole roster. When you talk about championships and excellence, can the RSL compete in that level of that arena? You're prepared to write those kind of checks?
Yeah, I would love Jason to answer this as well, and anybody else has thoughts on it. We've talked a lot about that, David, and we believe that investment it comes in many fashions, right? It's currency, certainly, to invest in players. It's investment in infrastructure and culture. It's investment in facilities and experience, like you talked about. And I would say emphatically, yes, we can compete at the highest level. That doesn't always mean that you're going to spend the most. I think you see that across the sports world. Culture really matters. Development really matters. And at the end of the day, you do have to make investment as well. And so the Miller family, our ownership group, wouldn't be at this if we didn't believe that we couldn't compete at the highest levels and compete for championships.
I would just echo that a little bit, as well as to say that I think I put some particular focus on what we've already done and what we're going to continue to do in this off season. We're very, very focused on making our health and performance and our recruitment departments elite. We're looking at how we have operated over the past couple of years, and I think we've been honest with ourselves to say we haven't done a good enough job in the recruitment department. We haven't done a good enough job with our professionalism and establishing an elite culture. When I say that, I'm talking about gym, competitiveness, and those sorts of areas. So we believe that we're putting the horse where it should be, and that's in front of the cart, to try to bolster our recruitment department first and foremost. If we're going to go out there and spend millions of dollars on players, we better know what we're doing. We better have these processes be very well vetted out, have a lot of people involved in it. Collaborative decisions are what we're about, and so we're starting there.
Jason, you mentioned your time with the Royals a little bit, learning from them and talking with that team. What have you learned from that side of the sport, and maybe what are some unique challenges that the women's game has that maybe the men's side doesn't?
It's really incredible, and I would say that when Steve and Michelle approached me about this opportunity, I was honest with them. I'm nervous. I'm nervous about that because I don't have a lot of experience in the women's game. But what I would say is right away, talking with some of the players, talking with the staff members, so appreciative to have somebody that was focused with them and to be helping them to try to move in a new direction and move in a better direction. The players on the women's side are so different than the men's, so appreciative of any efforts that you give towards them, so appreciative of what they have. It reminds me, honestly, of MLS 1.0. And so it's been a really rewarding experience to be involved over there. The game is very different, and when I say the game, I should be more specific. Player movement is very different there. The amount of leverage that players have there is very different. And so it is a learning process, which I've been fully committed towards that and feel like I've been in a pretty positive direction. So really excited about where that team is right now. I think we've gained some incredible learnings in these past 4 or 5 months that we will now apply to 2026. And we believe that we can right some wrongs that have happened in the first half of those first two seasons here.
President Christ, congratulations. Has a nice ring to it. I won't attempt the Latin, but as you go out and seek fortune for these clubs, what are the first few bold moves that you would like to accomplish if you haven't already spoken to them?
Yeah, and this is an interesting thing because in my perspective and in my opinion, that I don't see any reason why the two clubs shouldn't have the same identity. I believe that both clubs represent the same community, and so we should be a reflection of that. And so we have been really, really focused on, number one, establishing a clear identity and core values and mission statement for the Royals, which we will then translate back over to RSL, interestingly enough. Some of the work that we have done there has been so good, so collaborative, so involving the people on the ground to have an opinion there and to drive that process. So it's been amazing. Now, what we're going to do and what we've already sort of established is that we're going to be very focused in 3 areas. We believe that for Real Salt Lake and for the Utah Royals to continually, as I said, and consistently compete for championships, we need to be elite in 3 areas. Area number 1 is development, and I would say for RSL, that's a pretty strong point. I think that the development for RSL, development of younger players, whether that's from our academy or from an international basis, development of even middle-aged players to take the next step has been very good. Development of our staff members has been very good. So we feel that's a strong point, but we need to continue to focus on that. Number 2 is recruitment, and I touched on that. I think this is an area that we need to be honest with ourselves and say, over these past 3-4 transfer windows, it hasn't been great. And so what do we need to do differently? We can't continue to do the same thing and think we're going to get different results. So we need to do something different there. We need to bolster those departments, and we have done that already. We've hired a head of recruitment for Royals. We are in the final stages of hiring a new head of recruitment for RSL. Those people will have full departments that will be our scouting departments, will be our recruiting department, and that's how we're going to make better decisions as we move forward. And the third area is culture. And culture is a big bucket because for me it's not just about, it's not just about this gray idea of the word culture that gets thrown around a lot now. Culture for me is everything that surrounds the players, whether that's infrastructure, and we're looking at how we can improve some of those things, whether that's the stadium, the training facility, the fields, the nutrition, the identity, of course, that we spoke about, getting everybody's buy-in and understanding about who are we and what do we want to be going forward.
Congratulations, Jason, on the promotion, and excited to have you on board. If you could talk just a minute about maybe the gap between Real Monarchs and Real Salt Lake and how your influence will kind of help bridge that gap a little bit more, get those exciting young, maybe even Utah-based players to see that.
What I would say, first and foremost, really good question. Really, that was in my former role here as Director of Operations and Special Projects. One of my very special projects at the very beginning was to have some alignment up and down the academy, right through the Monarchs, right through to the first team. And a really good process when I could say honestly that I believe all of our teams are playing the same way now, which is critical because if we're going to develop players, they need to be able to move from the 16s to the 18s to the Monarchs to the first team and not being asked to do many different things. So the game model is now consistent throughout. The way we're coaching our players is consistent throughout. And so I feel like that pathway is very clear now. We are seeing some obvious benefits to that, and one Mr. Xavier Gozo this year is a tremendous example of this because he went right from the academy through to the Monarchs, now has been a tremendous contributor for us in the first team. And so we continue to focus on that. We continue to to really get all of our coaching staff to buy into the fact that development is important to us. And so we need to create opportunities for our young players to train with the first team. We need to create opportunities for our U18s to train with the Monarchs. We need to push these players forward and get them what they need. Ultimately, the most important thing for any young player's development is minutes played in games. And so we will continue to focus that. And I would say, in my perspective, the future is incredibly bright. We've got some amazing 16, 17, 18-year-old players that should come through here in the next year to 2 to 3 years.
Congratulations. You have a lot of experience as a player and a coach, and we hear from you wonderful words. You belong Salt Lake, you belong Real Salt Lake. What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge you have to fight with, and what's going to be the goals you have in mind?
I think David actually asked the question that's probably the answer to that is probably the biggest challenge. I think it will be the biggest challenge for us to consistently and continually compete for championships when we will be outspent. I don't think there's any doubt about it. We will be outspent in player acquisition and player costs by bigger clubs in bigger markets that have bigger stadiums, that have bigger marketing, that have so much more revenue. So what are we going to do about that? How are we going to compete? And that's where I think that we have to be laser focused in those 3 areas that I told you before. That's how we attack that challenge. But that is the biggest challenge. There's no doubt about it. I guess I'm somebody that strongly believes that you can go spend the most money in the world, but if those players don't know how to play together in soccer, in our sport, that isn't always going to lead to success. And I do believe that there's something about having a really tight-knit group of players that work together that can bring you to a different level.
Jason, enhorabuena. Creo que es magnífico para el club y para ti también por tu trayectoria. Una pregunta, ¿consideras que ha sido un éxito o un fracaso esta temporada que ya ha acabado? Y si te planteas cambios en la dirección técnica de los equipos.
I understood all the good stuff he said about me, but not the question.
Congratulations. This is on. Do you think that it was a success or a failure this past season, and what changes are you foreseeing for the next season?
That's a really good question. And I would say that I'm not sure I know the answer, if that's fair, because I'm a little bit mixed. I'm a little bit mixed on this last season. I think it was a very challenging one for a lot of reasons. And so from one perspective, my glass half full perspective, I think we have to consider ourselves successful when we can say, well, we competed for a championship. And what I mean specifically about that is if you make the playoffs, you are now competing for a championship. Now, am I content? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm not content. Pablo's not content. Kurt's not content. All of us in the club feel that we should have done better than be 9th place in our conference. We should have done better than be knocked out in a wild card round. And so that's our sort of level of expectation, is we expect to make the playoffs, and we should be pushing to be making it past the first round, which is where we've gone out in the last 2 years. So specifically, we are going to have a meeting this afternoon. So we've given the guys all a week off after the last game to emotionally get away, to go out and spend some time with their family, digest things, do a little bit of looking back. And so this afternoon we're going to have a meeting with the coaching staff to address exactly how the season went in their eyes, evaluate that, collaborate about that a little bit, and then we will move forward and then have ownership meetings. And that's where particularly my new role comes in, because I'm a person that will hopefully do a good job of facilitating those meetings, and then we'll get some feedback. And we just got to evaluate a lot of things, but to be specific about the answer, yes and no. Yeah, and then for the on the Royals side, what I would say is getting involved in the middle of this summer, we quickly addressed and identified some things that needed to improve, and feel like now, since those very initial meetings in the first week or two of the summer break, We feel that the performances have increased drastically. We feel that the culture around the locker room, around the training facility has increased drastically. We feel that the players are in a much better position. And so, as I said, I think we've got some real clear learnings about how we can translate that into a more successful beginning of a season, which is the part that the Royals haven't been able to accomplish yet. They've had, to be fair, not so good first halves of their seasons, and I think there's specific reasons why that has been the case, which we will change for next year.
Can you explain to us how you knit together development and being elite and competing for championships at the same time? Because to use Gozo as an example, he had a great season. I think he impressed a lot of people, and a lot of people think he has huge upside. But 4 goals and 3 assists out of that position isn't what you need if you're going to compete at a championship level. So how do you do both those things at the same time?
Well, I think this is the interesting part, and this is where I think we should be a little bit more clear, because I think there's maybe a bit of a misunderstanding in the public and perhaps the press about what does winning together through development mean, right? And so the 3 most critical words in that are obviously winning, right? And then what is the definition of winning? Are we talking about just winning games? Sometimes we're not, David. Sometimes we're talking about winning is the development of Gozo. So winning shows to ownership that the expenditures that we're making in our academy and our Monarchs is paying dividends and benefits because we're now developing a very important player. Is Gozo the finished product? Absolutely not. So is his statistical output this season going to be good enough next season? Absolutely not. But for right now, we've developed somebody that could potentially score double of that next year, correct? Now, together, that brings in what I've been harping on. I believe that we will here at Real Salt Lake and the Utah Royals have to do things very collaboratively to have any success. We will have to tighten up all the bonds that run between us to be successful moving forward in both clubs. And then development. Well, what are we talking about when we say development? We're not just talking about young players. We're talking about players that we bring in internationally that have stepped for the first time into the U.S. We've got to be focused on developing them as people and players as well. We're talking about development of coaches. Pablo Mastroeni is still what I would argue is still a little bit of a young coach. And Pablo Mastroeni has a tremendous growth mindset. He wants to develop himself. And so going forward, it's really critical that everybody that's involved in our club, myself included, and I think I've just made that point in my speech, I am very focused on trying to be better in my job. So we all need to be focused on developing. We all need to be coming in here with a growth mindset. And if you don't have that growth mindset or the ability or the belief that think that you can be better, this might not be the club for you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you. We'll go outside for a few one-on-one interviews now. Thank you.